Hello, good morning, welcome. I am Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. You are listening to Damn Radio. Coming to you live this morning from the Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art Studio. Feel free to call in 573-746-8020 if you have the urge, although I got a lot to talk about. I want to start with the fact that I love rain. Okay, let's go there first because that's, of course, the most important. Here we are at the Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art Studio, and the rain has been beautiful all weekend. You know what? I don't want to leave the house when it's raining. Not because I'm going to get wet, not because of any of that stuff. I understand the function of an umbrella. I get it. I just like hanging out in the house, putting on, I don't know, I use the 1 cup coffee deal, with push the button on the top. I got a, whatever that thing's called. I have a Keurig, I have a Nespresso. My favorite is the Nespresso. Tasty, a little milk frother there, get a little bit of that going on. You sit and you get all warm and you put a blanket on, even if it's not cold. And you hang out and you watch, reruns of, Bob Barker, whatever. Doesn't matter. Whatever floats your boat. And yesterday, I took a drive out to my sister's domicile, out to her residence to take some photos. Selling that, by the way, if you want any, you'd like to buy it. We got some very beautiful 4.6 something like that acres of pasture, a brand new steel building with 2 tall drive-through on either end and another tall garage door, so you could drive a large tractor trailer through there if you wanted. You could park it inside if you wanted. It's I think it's a 40 by 60, might be a 30 by 60. There's another piece attached to it. That one has a 40 by 80, so I get confused which one's which. But there's a parcel with 4 acres of farmland and 7 acres of woods across the street, across the road. And it's a pretty cool spot. And if it was somebody looking for a project, that would be a pretty damn cool project place. Put some cows up. My sister's a cow lover. And I love cows, too. You drive down the road, what cows? You get cows. They have cows. And cows, what better life could you have than being a cow? All you got to do is wander. Of course, there is the danger of getting hacked up and eaten by people. Well, maybe it's not such a good idea to be a cow. Who knows? But look at the life they get. They get to hang out in the grass. Of course, they get rained on all the time. It is pretty. Maybe I don't like cows anymore. I don't know. Maybe I've talked myself out of it. But any way you slice it, it's been a raining. There's positive things going on the planet. Some places on the planet. And I'm going to start feeding some of them to you. I finished up. So last week I also had to issue an apology. I was engaged in family drama all last week for the most part. Had to go to Idaho. I ain't the hoe. Idaho. And Utah. There's a cure for boredom, right? We're off to Utah. No, I went to a hot springs with my sister and her husband. That was pretty cool, and I appreciate them taking me out to places in Salt Lake Airport. It's different from when I remember it as a kid. I haven't. So I in my very early years, I lived in a little suburb of Salt Lake called Midvale, Utah. Went to Midvale Elementary up until my 5th grade year. And that is where I remember, some of the childhood nonsensical nonsense that went on out there. And the place is, vastly different than it was then, of course. And I've been back a couple of times, mostly just passing through. I do like the Bonneville Salt Flats. I like Great Salt Lake. I remember they're going for, little kids and stuff when I was in Cub Scouts or whatever I was doing out there. And it was, there was some entertainment. But I don't recall much of that because I was too young. Okay. But going back there now, my sister took me around some places, and was her and her husband, pretty cool people, telling me about the bears, and I'm not going jogging out there. Are you kidding me? Of course, I don't do that much anymore anyway. I'm a bicyclist. And I did manage to get my fat rear end on my exercise bike this weekend, and I'm really not fat. It's just I'm flabby, and I'm tired of being flabby. So we're going to do something about it. It's a very positive week coming up. All I wanted to do was talk about a little tiny bit of my spot in Utah and Idaho, and the cure for boredom, and the prices for gas out there are freaking ridiculous. $4.80 a gallon. $4.80, $4.79. You can't quite lie about that. It's good. $4.79. You save that penny, right? And in my truck, it'd be 35 cents. I'd save 35 gallons, 35 cents. It was only in February that old Sammy paid $2.39 a gallon. Friends and neighbors. I have more than one neighbor, I guess. Friends and neighbors right here in beautiful downtown Lake Ozark. $2.39 freaking cents. And it couldn't have been, that was February. And so February 28th come along. Instantly, we're paying $4. Yeah. Wonder who's profiting off of this. Sure as hell isn't us. We're getting fleeced again. And how do we fleece it? We blame it on some obscure thing that nobody understands, nobody cares about anyway, when allegedly we're supplying all our own oil over here. We got our own. Well, if we got our own, why are you charging me the global price for oil and not our own, right? Because we don't use our own, friends and neighbors. Or they're screwing us. There's only one of two possible equations there, right? They're either screwing us and taking advantage of the whole deal. No, sorry. You got to pay the global amount, even though ours is only traveling from down in Texas. You got to pay that global price because we control the global price, and you Americans got the most money. So since everybody else getting boned, why not bone you too? Because we need our billions. And I'm not one of those people who's against the rich. I'm not. I'm against being fleeced continually. How many more millions do you need? I swear to God, if I had $2 million in a bank, I would live very well the rest of my life. Of course, maybe I don't have enough yachts in my backyard. Maybe I don't have 7 homes, each one in Dubai. Of course, you got to have the Dubai home. If you're really going to be somebody, you need a house in Dubai, right? Anyway, now I've turned it into a bitchin' morning. It wasn't. It was a beautiful morning. It's going to be a beautiful week. And now I'm angry over people fleecing me for the price of gasoline. See what the price of gas will do to you, friends and neighbors. There was a boat bomb. Now, I saw a story on this. I'm going to try to find it for you. Saw a story on... let's see. There's some really racist stories out there, but there was here you go. Here's the issue. Listen to this story. This is great. And I have a theory on it, but let's get there first, and then we'll get to my theory. A U.S. fighter jet fired a missile at an Iranian-bound cargo ship. Okay? Now remember that. U.S. fighter jet fired a missile at an Iranian-bound cargo ship, disabled the vessel attempting to breach the blockade, right? A U.S. aircraft fired a missile at a cargo ship in the Gulf of Oman while enforcing the blockade of Iran, U.S. CENTCOM has said. According to CENTCOM, the Gambian-flagged MV Leon Star ignored more than 20 warnings on Friday while sailing toward an Iranian port. So, the U.S. aircraft disabled the vessel by firing a Hellfire missile into the ship's engine room after Leon Star's crew failed to comply. The ship is no longer transiting to Iran, CENTCOM said on X on Saturday. AP reported, citing a U.S. official, that the vessel remains adrift and U.S. forces did not board it. So now we're bombing commercial vehicles, and we've made that okay for Ukraine months ago. It's okay. We don't worry about that stuff. We now attack civilian vessels. Period. Okay. The latest military action near the Strait of Hormuz took place as peace talks with Iran, of course, failed to produce a breakthrough, despite optimism expressed by U.S. officials last week. That's only to keep the price of oil somewhat lower and to keep us shut up and what do you want to call it? Submissive. We need to be just submissive and say, this is the right idea. Kill those people in the engine room. Kill them. They're going to Iran. This is stupidity all the way across the board. Iran closed the waterway, which normally handles 25% of the global seaborne oil trade, 20% liquefied natural gas shipments to ships from hostile nations in response to the U.S.-Israeli airstrikes launched beginning February 28, and thus my displeasure at the price of gasoline. The U.S. imposed its own blockade on Iranian ports a week after. The U.S. has since disabled 5 commercial vessels and redirected 116 while enforcing the blockade. President Trump has since threatened to resume military operations. The Army of the Islamic Republic stands firmly and resolutely against any hostile move by the enemy, said Admiral Habibullah Sayari, the deputy commander of the Iranian Army for Coordination, said Saturday, as cited by Press TV, trying to get to Iran. Okay? So here's the funny part. Here's the part that I find... If it wasn't so sad, it is very sad that this is what we've come to. The Straits of Hormuz were open on February 27th. They were all open. Everything was just peachy, right? But Iran might get a nuclear bomb. Who gives a rip? I don't. If Israel's got one, God bless it, everyone should have one. Everybody can throw them at each other. Great. Like we should control that. We're the only ones who's ever used one. Israel's going to be the next one. Virtually a guarantee from Samuel Edward von Trapp. What am I, the third? I don't remember. JR comes up with that, but that's it. The next people to lob a nuclear bomb at each other is it'll begin with Israel. They will do it. They already feel blessed in it. There's another article I want to read to you about that stuff. But here's the funny part for me. Must we blow these people up? Okay, why are we regularizing, just like we did in Venezuela, by the way, just like we are now doing in Cuba, and now we've done it in Iran. We've made force the preferred method of diplomacy. Force. We're going to bomb the crap out of you, period. We're going to, this is the only tool we have left in the bag. That's it. And when that becomes the only tool you have left in the bag, you're failed. There's a decline of Europe I was going to read about, but you could almost as easily apply it to the United States, okay? And but the funny part to me about this whole thing, and this is what struck me initially, maybe this will put some inkling of you how weird I think, or how strangely. Maybe it's not strange. Maybe you think this way too. But what I first thought when I read this is, very first thing, U.S. fighter jet fires a missile at an Iranian-bound cargo ship. Why? Okay, so the first question in your mind is why? And then we know the answer. And the answer is because you can't stop the ship with your Navy, because your Navy will get bombed. So you can't. Why didn't we board them? Why didn't we board them and force them to stop? Why didn't we do that? Because we can't. The U.S. Navy will be bombed and we would suffer losses. So the best bet is to have the Air Force come in, or maybe it's a fighter jet from one of the planes in the Gulf, that they got all this huge billions of dollars being wasted out there when you could probably just take one off from one of the Arabic GCC countries over there and fly over and bomb these commercial vehicles should you feel the urge. And all you're doing is opening up the conflict to further destruction like this, for example. Iran retaliates after U.S. strikes and says next time we're going to get even harsher. Okay, this came out this morning. The IRGC said it carried out retaliatory strikes on an air base used by the U.S. after American forces attacked targets in southern Iran over the weekend, including the ship. The latest exchange has strained a fragile ceasefire reached in April after more than a month of fighting triggered by Israel and the U.S. Washington and Tehran are currently attempting to negotiate an MOU that will extend the truce for another 60 days and restart talks on Iran's nuclear program. That's good coffee. U.S. CENTCOM said in a statement Monday that it conducted measured and deliberate strikes on Saturday and Sunday in response to aggressive Iranian actions that include the shooting down of an MQ-1 drone. That's aggression. We're not going to allow you to spy over our territory, so that's aggression. Shot down an MQ-1 drone, Reaper, that was operating over international waters. It accused Tehran of unwarranted aggression during the ongoing ceasefire. Yeah, like we bomb a ship. We bombed the ship. You answer by destroying a drone, and you're to blame. Of course you are. Iran announced the downing of the UAV on Sunday, saying it was hit due to violations of the country's airspace over the Persian Gulf and bombing of ships headed for Iran. According to CENTCOM, the self-defense strikes, this is self-defense, right, by U.S. fighter jets targeted Iranian radar and command and control sites for drones in Gorak and Kishim Island. Okay, so you're allowed to take out their observation, like the Reaper's for observation, right? The Reaper is for intelligence gathering. That's it, you know. And they can bomb ships commercially. Those are okay. But by God, it's self-defense. If somebody takes out, you know, the U.S., all we did was take out Iranian radar and command and control, right? That's it. Later in the day, the IRGC said it responded to what it described as an American strikes on communication towers on Sirik Island. The Iranian military targeted the air base from which the U.S. attack originated, and the predetermined targets were destroyed. The statement did not identify the location of the base, although Kuwait's Kuna news agency reported that the Gulf nation's air defenses had attempted to intercept incoming missiles and drones. The IRGC warns that if the aggression is repeated, their response will be different, and the U.S. would be to blame. I have a hard time with this blame game myself, personally, because if you're out, if Donald Trump and company, if old put me in coach is out there telling his people, look, go out there and bomb these places where they get radio, bomb these places where they can launch drones, bomb these people during a ceasefire. I don't see that as anything else but aggression. I don't see that as self-defense. I mean, that's self-defense. So I think you're going to hit me. So the next day, I walk up and punch you in the face and go, and you go, wait a minute, why'd you do what? You know you're going to hit me. So, you know, I'm just defending myself. That's all. This is the length of logic of the Trump, put me in coach and company. Put me in, coach. Come on. I want to go to war. We need a war department. That guy. So Tehran's been making changes to the draft MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, after reports of U.S. President Trump sending a tougher proposal to Iran on Sunday. The exchanges on the text of the MOU are ongoing, with both parties regularly proposing amendments. So at least they're passing stuff back and forth through Pakistan. You know, God forbid you speak to each other or treat each other with some modicum of diplomacy. Top Iranian negotiator Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf previously stressed that Tehran has no trust in promises made by the U.S. Well, why should they? And they will not approve any agreement till we are sure, say the Iranians, that we have upheld the rights of the Iranian nation. According to Trump, you're not even allowed to have an Iranian nation. We need to blow the crap out of everybody, according to him and Israel, that your nation's not allowed. The only nation allowed to exist unencumbered, unimpeded, what do you call it? Well, not able to perform their own expansion is Israel. That's it. They are the only ones entitled to do whatever they want, anytime they want, with whatever force they want, and we, the lapdogs, just follow along behind. That's how it's supposed to work in the world, and apparently we never figured that part out. But that's the way the world goes. But the UK is talking a little bit differently. Here's what the UK says. Israel's Lebanon escalation must end. The UK says the British Foreign Secretary has said that their attacks are killing civilians. Israel's attacks in Lebanon are killing civilians and must end. UK Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, after the Jewish state stepped up yet again military activity to its northern neighbor. The IDF has intensified airstrikes in recent days and moved deeper into Lebanese territory despite the ceasefire agreed to in mid-April. On Sunday, Israeli troops seized Beaufort Castle, a 900-year-old Crusader fortress, while Prime Minister Netanyahu said he instructed the military to expand its ground maneuvers against Lebanese armed group Hezbollah. Now, well, let's finish this first. Netanyahu's order will complicate indirect talks between the U.S. and Iran, with peace in Lebanon being among Tehran's key demands for prolonging the truce with Washington. Nobody is watching out for Lebanon. Nobody. And over here, they train you that you're just supposed to equate Lebanon with Hamas or Hezbollah or whoever. You're supposed to equate that, and that's it. They are not people, just like Russia are not people. Those are not people. We can do whatever we want over there because they are not people. And they are all lumped into one category. One category, bad. Why? Russian. Why? Iranian. That means bad, doesn't it? Why? Chinese. Those are bad people, right? Why? Because put me in, coach, says so. And because Netanyahu says so. And because the Green Goblin says so. That's it. And there's nobody thinks for their own or on their own, goes back and, tries to say, wait a minute, this is not supposed to happen. All sides have to respect the ceasefire. German Foreign Minister Johannes Waldepool said in a statement Sunday that the Israeli advances are a cause for serious concern. But nobody will do anything about it, and they'll condemn them in the UN. They'll condemn them at the Security Council. They'll put arrest warrants out for Netanyahu, and nothing ever happens. This will exacerbate, according to Mr. Waldepool, the already tense situation and trigger new waves of displacement within Lebanon. Of course, so that Israel can seize more territory. That's what this is all about. That's what it always has been about. And that's that. 12 civilians were killed, at least, by IDF strikes on Sunday, according to Al Jazeera News. Data from the Lebanese authorities suggest that more than 3,400 people have been killed and 10,000 wounded and 1.6 million displaced since Israel launched its military operation against Lebanon in early March, just days after they attacked Iran. So tell me that the attack in Iran wasn't so that Israel could displace 1.6 million people and take that land over for themselves. All 1.6 million aren't terrorists, but according to everybody here, that's it. And here's Rubio, who's just completely impotent, spoke with both Netanyahu and Lebanese President Joseph Aoun by phone over the weekend in an attempt to push through a new proposal for a gradual de-escalation. Yeah, we got to get rid of that other million first. That'll be, if we gradually de-escalate, we can keep seizing 900-year-old fortresses. We can take all these old places and then just push these people out permanently, and it'll be all Israel all the time, and we expand our border. That is what you're supporting if you support the war against Iran, support the war against Israel, support the morons in our what do you call it? Legislature. Your geniuses like put me in coach, that guy. This will create space for gradual de-escalation and an effective cessation of hostilities, said the genius Rubio. As a first step, the genius Rubio, his plan calls for Hezbollah to halt drone attacks on Israel. Why don't you call for Israel to stop blowing up everything? Nobody's worried about Hezbollah hitting Israel, not remotely. They're worried about the opposite going on in Lebanon. That's what's going on. But Rubio, his first step is, no, we support Israel, period. Because we have to, because I get a lot of money from those guys, and I won't be president if I don't. So there you go. Let's see. The Israelis with vigor. Here's what they do with vigor. Get this. Here is your latest. Senior Israeli diplomat mocks France for calling for a United Nations Security Council meeting on Lebanon. Okay. A senior Israeli diplomat is mocking Paris after it summoned an extraordinary UN Security Council meeting over West Jerusalem's action in Lebanon, pointing at France's own domestic troubles. Over the past few days, Israel has intensified its bombing campaign in the country and advanced deeper into Lebanese territory, despite the alleged ceasefire announced 6 weeks ago, which Israel has never honored. The Israeli troops, I told you about the seizing of the castle, and Netanyahu said he instructed the military to expand its ground maneuvers in Lebanon. Yeah, there's a ceasefire for you. On Sunday, Paris requested an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council, the impotent UN Security Council, over the latest developments. And the only reason it's impotent is because the U.S. will not cross Israel. Never. All the other... They will veto any decision that comes up. Any decision. I don't care if it said, we strung up so many people on camera and put it up, and Netanyahu personally did it. The U.S. would not condemn it. They can do whatever they want, and everybody knows it. So Israel's political advisor to the permanent representative of Israel on the United Nations, Walid Gadban, took to X to mock France's request. He shared footage from the celebrations in Paris after the local football club, PSG, won the Champions League, implied that Paris should focus on its own domestic affairs. He said, meanwhile, in Paris, they're having all kinds of, fires and stuff like that post the other one. And so why don't you quit worrying about us while we destroy our neighboring countries, and then you might be able to say something about it. Isn't that crazy? Of course, they did injure 57 police officers. So in France over this victory. But victory was theirs, and they should be able to win. So now we're going to, where'd my beautiful stuff go? Here we are. We're going to share with you a bit of a a bit of a music break. And this is the final goodbye. Very, very interesting. I like it a lot. That was the long version. I didn't mean to do that, but I did. That was a 7-8 minute one. So sorry about that. I only meant to play the 3-minute one, but I let it go anyway because I like it. At any rate, that final goodbye is what that's called, as you might have surmised from the review of it. Let's see. We've already shared that nonsense. I've got a list of more things to share with you. Other stupidity going on the planet. I wanted to. There's one here that there's Sarah Wagenknecht has accused the Chancellor of Germany, Merz, of applying double standards to Moscow while damaging their own economy with sanctions. So there's been a lot of talk over the weekend. I've been paying attention to a lot of the places that normally opine on these sorts of things. A lot of attention talking about sanction against Russia, the forced maximum price for Russian oil in Europe. There was so Japan called, apparently. Japan called Russia. And Japan loves the sanctions. You know, they're used to doing what their Western masters tell them to do, kind of like Europe, right? And so they do what the U.S. tells them to do. If you put in sanctions, and they create themselves however many packages of sanctions we are on in Europe. We don't even remember anymore. It was 23, might be 24. I mean, I think we'll be at 30 by the end of the year. We always got to have some new sanctions against Russia, right? But they're pushing them to the side. These sanctions aren't so critical these days because, holy crap, we're paying for gas. Old Sam's paying $4 a gallon for gas, and his sister in Utah and Idaho is paying $4.79 a gallon to fill up the old, four-wheel drive pick-em-up truck and haul around some cows and whatnot. That was kind of entertaining. They haul around a lot of livestock out there. At any rate, Sarah Wagenknecht has accused the Chancellor of applying double standards because everybody's trying to get Russia now to deliver cheap gas. And guess what Russia's doing? So it's pretty comical, actually. And I hope to do the same to Europe, just because, to send the correct message. You need to do this because diplomacy's dead. It's all about force. It's all about benefit. It's all about it's the deal. It's the art of the deal. We're always winning. You're going to win so much. You're going to be sick of winning. And so Europe is very sick of winning right now. And they're just so sick of winning. And Japan is so sick of winning that they're calling Russia to go, listen, we can't pay for all this gas. There are shortages because somebody clogged up the Straits of Hormuz. And we don't, we don't know what to do here. We can't get any gas. How about Vladimir Vladimirovich, how about you give us some? And Vladimir Vladimirovich, apparently, through his office, not him directly, but somebody on his behalf, when the foreign, whichever it was, commerce or the foreign secretary, whoever it was, whatever interim guy called up to the Kremlin, says, listen, we need to make a deal to get some Russian gas over here in Japan because we're hurting. We're hurting just like the rest of the world is over the old Israeli bombarding of Iran and with U.S. support. And old put-me-in coach is making it tough on us all by this stupidity. So how about Vladimir Vladimirovich, you do us a solid and send us some of your gas. And the question back in response was, are you going to pay market price, or you're ridiculous, no one can buy Russian fuel unless they pay the market cap imposed by sanctions. So Russia can't get the U.S., they can get the global market rate, even though, remember, we supply all of our own, but we're still applying the global rate, right? The global rate of oil is, well, wait a minute. We're just doing what everybody else would do to make their money. Yeah, but we're supposedly all in it together, right? No, we're not. We're in it for the rich and the powerful to continue to make all their big piles of cash, and the rest of us in the United States get the shaft. That's how it works. And then now Russia has said, well, Japan, you get the shaft too. But you can put sanctions on Russia and go, nah, most you can get for your oil, you can't get the global rate. All you can get is whatever the amount was. I think it's $64, and they've been trying to lower it steadily. They've been keeping on pushing it lower and lower. We'll let you buy it, but you can't buy it for more than $60 a barrel. And so Russia loses all this money on the barrels because of these sanctions, and it's still profitable for them. So imagine how profitable it is in the United States, who isn't limited by this, and according to certain people, they aren't importing it all anyway. We supply that all here, right? So we pay the global rate because it's a global price. And so we get shafted just as much as the rest of the world and just as much as Russia because we're just people, right? So we shaft everyone. and the same old people get, Elon Musk gets to be a trillionaire soon if he's not already, right? And, I mean, seriously, what's he ever going to do with that? Seriously. Never going to happen. Anyway, the Russians told the Japanese guy, well, if you're not willing to pay the market rate, kiss our hairy white behinds. See you later. And that was the end of that negotiation. Europe is in the same scenario right now. They want to reduce sanctions, put them on hold for a month, whatever. While or until the end of the Iranian conflict. So you create your own conflicts all over the world, blame other people for it all, and then try to force the people that you're blaming to accept your framing of how the world is supposed to be so that the same old people can make the same old huge piles of cash. You want to talk about the proper advertising for the global order and the blood. Several days ago, I was watching, in my travels, sitting on a plane, I was watching one of the Tom Cruise ones. I forget which one, which Mission Impossible. There's like 80 of them, but one of the Mission Impossibles. And one of the bad guys was talking about the destruction of the global world order and tearing it down. Well, that appeals to those of us who are normal. We're tired of this crap. That's what we thought Donald Trump was doing. There's still people out there who believe that's what's going on, as Donald Trump is destroying the world order. I was always skeptical of that, and I'm even more so now, especially with putting me in coach and company in charge, and the same old neocons in charge that have been in charge all along. There was a little bit of a hiccup there for a while, but Trumpster's not going to be around forever. And as soon as he's gone, we go straight back to where it is. And arguably, we're right back there now. And I don't know. I could be convinced JRs of the planet, who I just think the guy is awesome. JR, I mean. I don't want to go too far. I know JR. JR is just a good dude, okay? And but these other people, I don't have the same faith in. Let's put it that way. And I try to convince JR, and I know he tries to convince me, but, I respect his opinion. I'm pretty sure he respects mine. Or at least allows me to have it without ridiculing me too much. I think he did last week on his show, and I called him on it because I heard it. But I was only half listening because I have him on in the background, whilst I'm working, doing some other stuff. And he put something in there about, I forget what it was, but I said something about Trumpster getting us into world wars and not being able to get out of him or something like that. He's going to have us at a war with everything. And I stand by my words. These are my words. I make them up. And I make them up. I don't make them up. I consider things and put together my theories on them. And I believe we're headed for the destruction of the same old world order anyway. I just don't think Trump's the one driving the train. That's what I don't believe. I believe over here we're on the last throes of globalism, and we're trying hard to keep it in place. And what's going on in Hormuz is one of those things that is the last of the we're in charge of the planet sort of thing. I believe that what happened in China between Trump and Xi Jinping wasn't necessarily positive for the United States. And it wasn't negative. I mean, it wasn't a bad trip. But what did we get out of it? Nothing. Some more money for a couple of big money people, but nothing else. When I always say this, but when Putin goes to China, they always come out with a couple of deals between countries, not between companies. Company deals, Elon Musk gets to go and get a cheaper, widget. Elon Musk gets a cheaper widget. Elon Musk and company get to make something a little bit cheaper going to China. Great. Boeing gets to sell 200 instead of 400 planes. Okay, also great. But what did the countries get? Okay. Trump's focus is always on the deal, today's deal. He still equates success with deals between companies, financial deals amongst his allies, his money people. And Elon Musk and all that, he's still in that category, okay? But it's all individual money. And that little money, it might trickle down to some of you. Maybe you should invest in Palantir, whoever everybody else is investing in. But trust me, your money that you make off it is minuscule compared to theirs. And that is not so on the Russian people and the Chinese people. They get large infrastructure projects that will be, like I explained to you about all the crossing the river between, the border, some of it's over a river, between Russia and China, which is some 4,000 kilometers. So it's lengthy. And there's all kinds of commerce going on there, and that for generations will be a positive scenario because they're building trade connections, real trade connections, not company to company, but people to people, culture to culture. That's what's building over there. And now they're trying to change the entire face of Southeast Asia or the Far East. And having been there personally and really, really loving it, the countries, and I want Mongolia. That's on my list. And I should get my passport back anytime, I hope. I sent it away a week or so ago. And they said it would take 2-3 weeks to finalize so I get my visa for Russia because I'm going back. And I want to get in, and my favorite places over there. I'd love to go to the Chinese border and see some of this stuff. Next year, the BRICS conference in China. This year, it's in India. I'm trying to figure out the September-October visit to go to BRICS and get that arranged to go to, where is it, at New Delhi? I can't remember. And to go into India. But they're creating long-term structure. So when the double standards of the economy that happen everywhere, when you talk about sanctions, this is what we're doing to Iran too. And Iran came unglued on the BRICS stage not long ago, a couple of weeks ago. They went for the foreign minister's appearances at BRICS, and the Iranian foreign minister went ballistic on these people, on all the BRICS countries. In fact, the West took great pleasure in saying, look, BRICS is dying, BRICS is dead. BRICS is not dead. BRICS is not a defense organization. BRICS is an economic structure, and it's an economic with a new bank, the new development bank. They have new payment projects where people are allowed to have other places. That's why Iran, it's so important to them and why they're so pissed off about it. But they take most of their payments in yuan and in ruble and rupee, and so does everybody else in that entire area. And they are shortchanging the dollar. And this is what Trump is pissed off about. You don't want that. You don't want people. What if to cross the Straits of Hormuz? And I can imagine, and I know it's part of the terms, is all of the Iranian things have said, listen, that is not international water. The Straits of Hormuz are not international waters. And they're not. It's a definition. And that does not meet the definition of international waters. International waters are 23 miles across. This is only 21 or something like that. And your own international border stretches something like 12 miles out. Right? So Oman on the one side, at the narrowest part, Oman on the one side, and Iran on the other, between the two of them, they have 24 miles. Well, it's only 23. So there's a joint sliver in the middle that is a mile that is owned by both, that is actually on the territory of both Oman and Iran. That is your own country. Why can't you block it off? I'm not saying I'm all for blocking it off. I'm saying it's always been open. And if you continue to torment and treat people this way, and bomb them indiscriminately for Israel, somebody's bound to do something about it, and they don't like it. And by the way, many other countries have similar straits where people have to pay to get out of the Red Sea, right? You got to pay there to get out of, to go around, where is it? In Southeast Asia. I forget the name of the strait, but, now I can't even remember the name of the country. but the name of the country over there, New Zealand. Yes, there you go. Outside of New Zealand, you try to get outside of there, and you got to pay. You can't just go through. You must pay, and many other places in the world where you got to pay, and it's between the countries, and the countries make money off of that. That's part of their deal, and so. Why? It costs you $1 million plus to get your ship through the Panama Canal. $1 million. And that place falling apart. It's old, and it needs some upgrades. And so China went to do it. And in the very first part of his term, old Trumpster said that ain't happening. Remember, he tried to boot him out, or he did boot him out of the eastern end of the Panama Canal, China. Get him out of there. And made it, then he did the same thing in Venezuela. He's doing that, has stolen the Venezuelan oil from China. And, he just made no bones about it. First, it was narco-terrorism. Remember that? So all these economic victories, I wonder how long they're going to be victories, because the day is coming where and it's not going to be in my lifetime even, probably. And I still got, some time left, a few days. I got something. And but in my lifetime, it's not going to change from where it is. But our children are going to see it. Our children are going to see a new world order that isn't dominated by the United States. Maybe they can figure out how to get along. Maybe they can figure out that diplomacy is really an art that has been lost, and force and the art of the deal aren't the way to run the planet, at least not the art of the deal of a company and several guys making the big fortunes and everybody else losing their ass. Maybe we should long for the Star Trek Next Generation. We don't need money anymore. We got rid of all those disputes, as they claim. But everywhere they talk about the double standards. And most recently, the veteran German politician Sarah Wagenknecht tore into Merz's Russian policy. Germany's policy on Russia is full of contradictions, says Sarah. She accuses Berlin of punishing Moscow over alleged violations of international law, but excusing similar accusations against the United States. quite true, and damages its own economy in the process. Speaking at a public appearance in Berlin this week, Wagenknecht took aim at Chancellor Friedrich Merz's support for the Western sanctions on Russia and his own stance on international law. And I wonder if this is in English. I should play it for you. I think it is. Let me see if I can hear it first, and then we will see if it is in English. No, it's only in German, so I can't do it, unfortunately. But I could read the actual for you. But her speech, there's a good block of it I'm going to read off for you. Ready? Russia's oil and gas sell like hotcakes all over the world, and we act as if we could end this war simply by stopping our own purchase of that oil. People say that because Russia has violated international law, we must impose sanctions. But when the U.S. violates international law, Mr. Merz stands in front of the camera and tells us that international law is actually outdated. So, for the U.S., it's outdated, but when Russia violates it, we have to completely ruin our own economy because we have to impose sanctions. Nothing adds up with this policy. And she's absolutely right. Since the escalation of the Ukraine conflict in 2022, the EU has imposed 20 rounds of sanctions. More than that, 20. I thought we're up to 23. So I don't. This reporting, whoever, I think they're wrong. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? But the EU has imposed 20 rounds of sanctions targeting Russia's economy and energy while seeking to phase out Russian fossil fuels. Russia has redirected its energy exports to Russia, as we follow here all the time. According to U.S. Energy Information Administration data, Asia and Oceania now account for 81% of Russian crude exports in 2024. And China and India have emerged as Russia's largest customers. And rightly so, by the way, instead of Europe. I mean, they're right there. They got pipelines going through. Meanwhile, and we blow up the pipelines, Joe Biden, maybe he was the art of the deal guy. Joe Biden encourages the Ukrainians, I don't even know that I believe that story, but they blow up Nord Stream 2, which was going to provide cheap gas to Germany for a very long time. And now they're trying to purchase it for nothing. The West is. So I forget the guy's name. But he was it Bloomberg? I can't remember who was going to buy it. Some extremely wealthy guy over here wanted to buy Nord Stream 2 for pennies on the dollar. And then do what? Buy Russian gas. But he's got to buy it from Russia. But, Russia owns like 49% of it or something. And but I can't remember. The details on that are still crazy. But you should take a charge of it. Somebody, maybe Trump will just take charge of it and, say, we're the biggest. We'll take it and we'll put U.S. LNG in it. We'll finish that pipeline all the way into Canada because Canada is our 51st state. We'll go through Greenland, There's supposedly some talks about the U.S. taking southern Greenland, by the way, and boy, I'm all over the map today. Let me finish this story. Germany has entered a recession in 2023 as industries grappled with higher energy costs after the loss of Russian gas, much of it replaced by far more expensive United States LNG imports. Western governments accuse Russia of violating international law in Ukraine, a charge that Moscow, of course, rejects. Wagenknecht contrasted this with Western responses to U.S. military actions, including Venezuela, including Iran. In March, Merz declined to question the legality of U.S. actions in Iran. Well, you don't even question Greenland anymore. Allegedly, there's something the U.S. is in talks to take the southern chunk of Greenland. And they say it's actually going to happen. arguing that it was not the time to lecture allies about international law. This is Mertz. Opponent sees on his remarks as evidence that Berlin applies different standards to the U.S. and Russia. Well, they do. They all do. Wagenknecht leads the Sarah-Wagenknecht Alliance, which has become an influential voice in German debates over Russia, sanctions, immigration, energy policy, despite narrowly missing entry into the Bundestag in 2025 federal elections. But they're very influential. And this stuff is coming and getting larger, are the jokes of the United States and Europe on all of this. It's still the same. Still the same. Let's see here. We want to play one more song whilst we take a bit of a break. How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts on that? Yeah, I like this one too. This one's pretty cool. Enjoy. I like that. Good stuff, Maynard. Okay, that was a long play song too, though, sadly for us, because you don't get to hear me as much as that beautiful music, which I truly enjoy. And I can listen to that stuff. In fact, I do often listen to that type of music in the background and just leave it up and running. Kind of good stuff, Maynard. So there's something I wanted to share to you just because there are two stories that I'm hoping to finish, and I think I can do this. And one has to do with Cuba and the Scott Ritter. It's an opinion piece. It's pretty long. And then the other one is a much shorter one, but I have some commentary to add on it. So over the weekend, Candace Owens posted pictures of her, something on Red Square where she was, and she talked about the unbelievably beautiful Moscow. And frankly, it's only there, Ben Shapiro said that what she had done is an act of ideological subversion. Oh no, Russia! You got to punish Russia, right? Everybody, and I'll bet you $100 Shapiro hasn't been there, or he wouldn't say stuff like that. I am telling you, and I challenge any one of you. I have a very good friend who I'm getting my Russian visa renewed. This will be my. So I had a bunch of visas back when I was traveling on a diplomatic passport that were taken care of by the State Department. And the first one they screwed up. I told you that story already on this channel, how not the first one, but well, no, it had to be the first one because they screwed it up. No, it couldn't have been the first one because it doesn't matter. But either way, you get them for a period of time. You get them for, 6 months. But the big entrance on the bottom is Mnogokratnaya versus Jedinokratnaya, which is basically one time versus many times. You get I don't know. The word in Russian is more than once, basically. And I can't remember. Multiple entry. There you go. It's a multiple entry visa in America. So you can have it a single entry or multiple entry, right? And but you don't want to say many entry. That's not the right word. So I was having trouble struggling to translate it to English. Anyway, it's a multiple entry visa. And I've had, and I had one when I was had a diplomatic passport. I had one when I had I had a one-time entry also when I got a diplomatic several times with a visa, and that one way back when in the early 90s. So when it was still Soviet Union, even I had some, and then I got them again when it was Russia, and then over the last 8 years, it's been I've had bunches of them. My passport was filled. I told you that story last week. I got a passport in 2019. I had one in the other passport before that, had a couple of them. But this one on the 2019 passport that I got is still valid till 2029. I didn't have enough space and all of my spots were full of being where I wanted to travel and I couldn't travel and Russia wouldn't take my passport because they had no room left to put my visa. And so they put a full picture, photo. It's a process to get a Russian visa. And, I've had to do that for single entry several times and then multiple entry. I got the last one I got was a 3-year visa and I was damn glad to have it. Okay. So I've applied for another 3-year visa this time. so I can go when I feel like it. And Russia is freaking beautiful. So I want to share this story with you because here's a Candace Owens thing. And I challenge any one of you. You want to call me up and say, Sam, schedule me a trip to Russia. We'll go to some fantastic spots. There are hunting places. There are Lake Baikal where I still haven't been. There are sanatoriums where people can go and get medical treatment for several weeks. We'll have to get you an interpreter for that where I don't need one, but it's a lot of fun and it's cheap and they take care of you. And it's beautiful. It's fantastic. And and it's, believe it or not, high dollar, especially in Moscow. And you go to Moscow, these people are living well. And trust me, there is nothing wrong with Moscow. And Moscow is clean. It is beautiful. It is safe. Now, every place has a place where you don't want to go, but tell you what, you don't want to wander around at night anywhere else, but in Moscow, it's always been, safe at night. Even in the 90s, I didn't feel like I was going to be murdered on a street corner, But it's different than New York. Hell, I wouldn't go out in New York. It's disgusting and nasty. I saw a guy take a dump on the sidewalk. Literally, he dropped trowel right there and squatted and let it fly. And there was a cop standing not 30 feet away. And I was like, hey. And the cop didn't do anything. He just, and I was like, nothing. I watched a guy take it. I didn't watch, but I saw the initial, that boy had some problems. And he just, like I said, he dropped trowel, and right there, he joked it. The old trousers around the ankles and the dual moon rising. It was not good, or the dual moon setting, however you want to put it. But that was disgusting. You wouldn't see that in Moscow. No freaking way. And so. Anyway, ever since that time when she posted these things, she's been, Candace Owens has been subject to accusations of Russian collusion. Tucker Carlson is guilty of what? He's a puppet for the Kremlin. Oh my God, he's a puppet. U.S. political conservative commentator Candace Owens has brushed off the criticism of her recent visit to Russia after posting photos from what she described as an unbelievably beautiful Moscow. Owens described her trip to her 6 million YouTube subscribers as a family vacation, but fellow commentators criticized the visit, with Daily Wire co-founder Ben Shapiro labeling it an act of ideological subversion. Now, why? Because you disagree? You don't tell me you don't think Russia's beautiful. That means one thing. You haven't freaking been there. Here's her quote, I'm starting to understand why the talking heads panic and shout and lie about Russian collusion when they learn an American with a platform is traveling here. Owens wrote on X on Sunday, sharing a photo of herself on Red Square. It is genuinely shocking how clean, beautiful, and orderly this city is. It is so far removed from media depictions, she said. And it's nuts because she's absolutely right. And the metro stations, the subway, which is enormous, and you can get in this anywhere in the entire city of Moscow, completely safe, completely clean, and unbelievably beautiful. Unbelievably. It is, I tell you what, if you have it, just go to Moscow to visit the subway to be impressed. Because it's freaking fantastic. And here's Laura Loomer. Laura Loomer posts on May 31st. Get this. Ready? Candace Owens is 100% in communication with sanctioned individuals, she said on X. As I reportedly recently, Dugin says he wants Russia to sell nuclear weapons to Iran to destroy the United States. The State Department, DOJ, really need to investigate at real Candace O. With the backing of millionaire financier Konstantin Malafeyev, Dugin has even built alliances with several Trump surrogates to help him amplify his message in America. Dubbed by the Russian media as God's oligarch in 2014, Malafeyev launched his own channel, Tsarsgrad TV, and named Alexander Dugin its chief editor. And here's another one. Ryan Moiro, Russian state-directed Tsargard TV, sanctioned by the U.S. government. Oh, that means something. Hell, you ought to wear that like a freaking badge of honor. Announces that Candace Owens has been interviewed by a spokesman for the Russian Orthodox Church Moscow Patriarchate. Putin-controlled, they say, and it will soon be released on Spas TV. Uh-oh. At Laura Luma. Podcast Avia Companias Nova Atlichilas. It means the podcast in the avio company set itself apart again. Copy everyone else. And here she is on Red Square, and there's her picture. Owens also shared photos from a theater and a church. I'm not sure what I was expecting, she said, but it wasn't this. Moscow is an unbelievably beautiful city. And if you don't think so, you're a freaking idiot, and not only a Russian... what do you call it? Propaganda artist, I suppose. Republicans and Democrats alike, along with numerous media figures, similarly criticized journalist Tucker Carlson for going to Moscow in 2024 to record interviews with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Carlson said he found Moscow to be so much nicer than cities in the U.S. Well, it's true, and argued that American media coverage of Russia and the Ukraine conflict is heavily biased. It is. He dismissed his critics as professional liars. They are. Owens initially rose to prominence in the late 2010s, blah, blah, blah. We don't care about that. She joined Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire in 2020, where her podcast reached millions of viewers. But she was fired 4 years later following a public dispute with Shapiro over Israel's war in Gaza. Owens later broke with President Trump over his support for Israel. Lots of people are. It's funny how they justify the one and condemn the other when the same rules are allegedly being broken. It's nonsense. Little tiny coffee break. Following the launch of her own show on YouTube, the podcaster drew criticism for her controversial statements, including suggestions that Israel could have been involved in the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Last year, French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte filed a defamation lawsuit against Owens after she suggested that France's First Lady was born a man. It's quite the suggestion. It's hard to ignore the similarities to manhood with old Bridget there. But I don't make any comment one way or the other. People might look at me and say, oh, that's a feminine dude. Well, you know, that's the way. Maybe I just dress well. What does that mean? I don't know. But I really don't dress well either. And the final story, which I think we can get to, is Scott Ritter. Okay. Now, I interviewed the old Scott Ritter once on my show. I might have to contact him again because this is good stuff. And he's a former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer, same agency that I worked with. And then he went to the UN afterward. And author of Disarmament in the Time of Perestroika, Arms Control and the End of the Soviet Union. He served in the Soviet Union as inspector implementing the INF Treaty, as did I. He was on General Schwarzkopf's staff during Gulf War, and from 1991 to 1998 was a UN weapons inspector. Here's the story, and I think this is written by Mr. Ritter, okay? With much of the world's attention on the still unresolved conflict between the U.S. and Iran, the average consumer of news may be forgiven if they had forgotten that the U.S. had on January 3rd of this year launched a mini invasion of Venezuela, which resulted in the death of scores of people, including a number of Cuban security personnel, and the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. The U.S. justified this action by noting that Maduro was, in its books, a fugitive from justice, having been previously indicted in a U.S. federal court on narcotics trafficking. The ease with which the U.S. orchestrated the collapse of the Maduro regime and facilitated the transfer of power to a more than compliant vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, helped the administration of Trump project an aura of invincibility when it came to the implementation of what the president and his advisors were calling the Monroe Doctrine. Their take on the 19th century Monroe Doctrine, which declared the Western Hemisphere to be the exclusive domain of the United States. A little more than a week later, on January 11, President Trump posted on his Truth Social account what amounted to a direct threat against the government of Cuba. This is true, by the way. Cuba lived for many years on large amounts of oil and money from Venezuela, the president wrote, stating there had been a direct relationship between a Venezuelan economic support to Cuba and Cuban security support to Venezuela. Venezuela now has the U.S. of America, the most powerful military in the world by far, to protect them, and protect them there we will. There will be no more oil or money going to Cuba. Zero. I strongly suggest they make a deal before it is too late. The president then set off a firestorm of speculation on American social media when, responding to a joke post that was made on X late in the week, he said, "Marco Rubio will be the president of Cuba," he said. Somebody posted that, and he said, "Sounds good to me." Regime change in Cuba was in the cards. A month later, President Trump met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the White House, where the decision was made to attack Iran. The U.S. and Israel launched a surprise attack on February 28, starting a 37-day campaign that saw the U.S. and Israel fail to achieve any of their stated military and geopolitical objectives, and which left Iran in a position where it dictated the fate of the global economy by controlling the flow of oil and gas through the Strait of Hormuz. An invasion of Cuba is no longer a top Trump administration policy. But overnight, the calculus changed. On May 21st, Marco Rubio declared that Cuba was a leading sponsor of terrorism in the entire region. His comments came the same day the U.S. Department of Justice unsealed an indictment against Cuban President Raul Castro. And I read that to you, that ridiculous indictment. Same old crap. They're taking jurisdiction they do not have. If you don't understand jurisdiction, one day I'll give you an entire jurisdiction response or book on this. I'm not going to make it through this entire article, unfortunately. But I suggest to you that you go out and find the Scott Ritter, Cuba Could Be the Bite Trump Cannot Chew, that comes out. Let's see if I can. We'll try to get through it, but I don't read that fast. Rubio's painting Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism carries about as much intellectual weight or factor as saying that Maduro was engaged in narco-terrorism, because that ain't what it was about. Bottom line is that the Trump administration is laying the groundwork for a military invasion of Cuba, the imposition of an even more stringent campaign of economic strangulation against them, or both. The impetus for such action rests not with any inherent threat posed by Cuba and its government, but rather the need for the Trump administration to chalk up another win on its national security scoreboard following the embarrassing setback with Iran. Midterm elections loom on the horizon, although Trump has declared his foreign policy actions are formulated and implemented independently of the political pressure brought to bear by the consequence of the Republican Party performing poorly at the polls. In short, the likely event that the Republicans lose control of the House of Representatives, the remaining 2 years in office will be subject to political paralysis brought on by endless impeachment proceedings that will make the final 2 years of Trump's first term in office be similar, where he was subjected to 2 separate impeachment efforts, pale by comparison. But impeachment is the least of Trump's problems. Void of a Senate conviction, the impeachment proceedings are simply brushed off by Trump and his supporters as politically motivated action by embittered Democrats. Probably true. The real threat to Trump comes if the Republicans lose control of the Senate. especially by a margin significant enough to raise the specter of conviction, with at least 60 of 100 senators must vote in favor. Here is where Trump is making a huge miscalculation when it comes to the issue of Cuba and domestic American politics. Trump is taking guidance from Secretary of State, National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, a man who has a lifetime of anti-Cuban angst built up inside him, which colors his worldview. I wish I could finish this, but I'm not going to be able to. Perhaps we'll come to it tomorrow, and I shouldn't have started. I didn't think I had enough time. I'm Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. Join me tomorrow, and we will proceed. Or go find his article on your own. Go to see internationalflavor.com for all former shows, or go to damradio.com/podcasts for follow-up. Thanks for being here today. Have a good mid-Missouri day.